Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chip Hartner, Assistant VP for Communications at the University of Rochester Medical Center. Welcome. Yesterday, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, announced preliminary results of a clinical trial for the antiviral drug remdesivir as a potential treatment for COVID-19. Our researchers at URMC were involved in this NIH-sponsored study of the drug, which was administered to COVID-19 positive study volunteers here at Strong Memorial Hospital. Today, we are joined by the two co-directors of the URMC Vaccine and Treatment Evaluation Unit, VTEU, to discuss these results. Our VTEU is one of 9 centers in the US designated by the NIH to study emerging infectious diseases like COVID-19. The two faculty members and co-directors are on the left, Dr. Ann Falsey, who's a professor of medicine and infectious diseases, and Dr. Angela Branch, who's an assistant professor of medicine in the infectious disease unit. I also want to thank again Morgan Underwood from Interpretive Services and our 2 ASL signers for today, Chris and Will. And with that, I learned only today that the list is not in order of sign up, but the list of reporters is alphabetical by first name or character. So we're going to go bottom up. Will Astor at the Rochester Beacon. We will start with you and ask if you've got a question for our doctors today.
Yes, I do. Wait.
Yep, we're here.
Okay. I got confused as to mute and unmute. How closely did the local results track with what NIH is saying about the national results of the study?
Well, I'll answer that. I think that we only have very high level results from the national study, and the study is actually still ongoing, so we are not unblinded. So we don't know who had placebo and who had remdesivir. So we actually cannot answer the question.
Okay. And would the, I'm assuming I get another follow-up. Should this turn out to be a positive thing, does the fact of the clinical trial being held here have any impact on local availability of the drug once it becomes available?
So we have a second arm of the study that will be starting hopefully sometime next week. That second arm of the study will include enrolling patients here who have COVID-19 who will receive remdesivir, which is the drug that we're talking about today. Half of the study subjects will receive remdesivir alone, and half of them will receive remdesivir with a second drug, which is an anti-inflammatory drug called baricitinib. So it will allow us, as part of the study network, to continue to make this drug available to patients who participate in the study.
Thanks. Well, Dr. Branch, these masks are awful. Could you say the name of the second drug again?
Baricitinib.
Baricitinib, okay. Well, Mark Michaud can send that to anyone who's got a follow-up question. Next is WHAM TV, and I think that's Tyler Brown today.
Good afternoon. My question is, so far in terms of the number of people you guys are studying, how many people is taking place, excuse me, how many people are taking part in the trial here at URMC, and how many of those people are local?
So we have had a total of 16 individuals enrolled in the study at URMC. And as you know, Strong is a tertiary care center. So some people were flown in from outlying hospitals within the system, but they are all people from upstate New York.
All right, and my follow-up question, Dr. Fauci this morning said that right now he believes that we are possibly on track to get a vaccine by January. Based on what you guys are seeing in terms of like the treatment, things of that nature, what you guys are researching. Do you guys believe that's a possibility as well, that we could receive a vaccine sometime in January?
So not to be flip, but I believe what Dr. Fauci tells me. He is a wealth of information, and I think he's a straight shooter. But I think he's being optimistic, and that's with all the stars aligning. And I think it's possible, but it would require a Herculean effort on many people's parts, and so it's possible.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. And from Spectrum News, I see Seth Voorhees is here. Seth, sorry, you're unmuted now. Anyone on the line from Spectrum? What do you see something? Yeah, right here. All right. Oh, wait. Seth? Okay. He's taking a pass. How about WHEC Channel 10? Is there a reporter on the line? Anyone from Channel 10? Okay, they're probably just rolling tape on this. Rebecca Fath from WROC Channel 8.
Hi, Chip. How are ya?
There we go.
Good. Hey, doctors. How are you, ladies?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Good. So a couple questions for you. Now this is going to seem maybe a little bit like might seem like a silly question. I'm not sure. Is it fair to say, do we know at this point, I know you said the study's still going on, but is it fair to say that we can't say right now whether or not remdesivir is a cure? Or is it just not, it's not even in the cure category, it's just a treatment?
So cure is not a word we use when we're talking about infections. We tend to refer to them as treatments because that's what they do. They treat the infection by working against whatever pathogen or agent is causing that infection. And that, combined with a whole host of other medical therapies and your body's own response, is what leads ultimately to a cure. At this point, based on what we found out over the last couple of days about the study and about the results of having treated people with remdesivir versus placebo, I would say that 3 days ago, if you'd asked me that question, I would have said that we don't have any proven treatments for COVID-19. But based on some of the data that's come out over the last couple of days, it seems that remdesivir does show some proven benefit over placebo. And so we're in a much better place today than we were 2 days ago.
Great news. Thank you so much. Now, switching gears.
Rebecca, I think Dr. Fauci is going to comment, and then we'll get back to your follow-up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Yep.
no, that's okay. I was just going to expand on what Dr. Branch said, in that, because I think sometimes people won't understand the kind of results that we're reporting on. This was sort of an urgent announcement, which was instigated by the Data Safety Monitoring Board. So with any kind of a clinical trial, there are people who do know who got placebo and who got drug, and they watch over the trial to make sure there is not any adverse effects, or if there's a strong signal that there is a positive effect, then the ethical thing to do is to release that result early. So that's what happened. And so we are operating under some results, which we can let you know. But what we can say that it was significant enough that the Data Safety Monitoring Board felt that the community should know that, and that they should move forward with remdesivir as a very encouraging treatment. Not a miracle cure, but clearly it does have some effectiveness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, moving along to another question that I had, please, if that's okay, Chip.
Yep.
Okay, great. Now, so like if a patient comes into the hospital today and has to stay, they're not going to be given this treatment. Just so I have it totally done, there's only 16 people you said, who have agreed to be part of this study. So if someone comes in a dire circumstance, you're not going to necessarily just weave them into the study, or is that a conversation you have?
Well, with any research study, we invite people, as long as they meet the criteria, to participate. We inform them of the risks and benefits, and then it's a decision that they generally make, sometimes with their families if they want to participate. They have to provide informed consent.
And we do want to thank the 16 patients that did volunteer and their families. They were willing to participate in the study under really extraordinary circumstances, and we really want to thank them for contributing to the science and to some of the more optimistic things that we found out over the last couple of days. As we said, we will continue to enroll subjects in the study, so there will be opportunities for patients to participate and receive remdesivir, but it is somewhat limited.
And Rebecca, I'd like to,
Last,
I want to jump in on your question. If I'm
sure.
understanding, if you're asking, has anyone else gotten remdesivir? I believe the answer is yes on a compassionate use basis. I think when we had Dr. Prasad and Dr. Hopkin last week, they were saying that some patients can receive it. I don't know if our doctors here know that, but I think
Yeah. So there's several mechanisms by which someone could have been treated with this medication, and it actually evolved over the month or so that we've been dealing with the crisis. Gilead, the manufacturer, did initially make it available on what's called compassionate use, where you can apply to the company and the FDA to obtain it for a very ill patient. They actually, because the demand became unmanageable, they did not continue that program. And for a while, the only way to receive it was on a clinical trial. But I'm sure the question everybody's going to ask is, now that we know that there is a beneficial effect, when can we expect that all patients can get it? And, I was listening to Dr. Fauci this morning, and can't answer it precisely. The company is working as quickly as possible with the FDA to make it available under emergency use. But then how quickly will it arrive in Rochester for our patients? Again, it's going to depend on manufacturing capabilities and delivery. So as soon as humanly possible, but we can't answer the question for all patients.
Great. I don't want to take up too much time. I just have one last question. Just in general, you two amazing women heading this study, it's a big undertaking, right? How do you feel today, bringing us this news that you feel like it's very encouraging? Might not be a miracle drug. I mean, how does that make you feel as a doctor?
Well, we have a much bigger team than just the two of us, a whole team of nurses and study volunteers. And on Wednesday, when we told them about this, the results that we'd heard Tuesday night at an emergency phone call, one of our nurses said that she's going to go home happy crying instead of sad crying, which I think is just sort of reflective of just the magnitude of what we've been seeing over the last month, and how reassuring and just rewarding it is to know that we are part of something that could be beneficial to people here in Rochester and wider.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Rebecca. And next up is Patty Singer from Minority Reporter.
Hi. So of the 16 people that you've had so far, what's the racial ethnic makeup of that, and how are you going to do that going forward in the next arm of the study, since you have a limited pool already, to make sure that you're getting some diversity so you get good results that can be generalized to larger populations?
Oh, I would say that of our 16 subjects within the study, it was pretty representative of the Rochester community in general. I think it was both racially and gender diverse, and what we would expect to continue to happen in future enrollment. We don't sort of cherry pick by gender or by race. We really just choose patients that potentially are eligible, who we think would potentially derive some benefit. We talked to the critical care team and the doctors that are taking care of patients. We speak to families. Not everyone is willing to participate in a research study. So all these factors get taken into consideration when we choose the subject or choose a patient to participate in the study. And I think so far it's been pretty representative of our community here.
And follow-up, Patty?
Yes, what else, this is early for this drug, so what else could be learned that might make you have to pull back on the excitement of this? Is it just more people who get involved, you get more data that find, you get some confounding results?
So it's a very large study. These are the results from about 400 individuals. And that was the original target recruitment. We over recruited to about, well, over 1,000. And that will allow us to do some very important sub-analyses. So we can look at how long people were ill and whether people who were ill a long time versus a short amount of time derived benefit. So it might be going forward, it wouldn't be prescribed in people who've been sick for 3 weeks. We can also look at people at the point of respiratory failure. So there's a lot of different analyses that will be extremely valuable in defining how best to use the drug.
One of the more encouraging results that were reported to us over the last few days is that it does seem to be pretty safe. In fact, when they looked at safety concerns in people who got drug versus placebo, there were less safety concerns in the drug arm compared to the placebo arm. So that's been one of our concerns with this medication going forward. When we talk to patients and to providers, we always made sure to let them know that while we hope there's benefit, there could also be harm. And so finding out that there really wasn't any significant harm that the Data Safety Monitoring Board found was really actually one of the, I think, the best findings that they were able to report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Next on our alphabetical list was Max Schulte, but he has referred to Brett Dahlberg from WROC News. Brett, you got a question?
Hi, yes, thank you all. I am curious about what this might change for the way that actually, let's start with this. What is the clinical use of remdesivir? What does it actually do for a patient?
So remdesivir is an antiviral. That means that it, let's say it kills the virus. It prevents it from replicating in the body. We have all sorts of different therapies. Some things dampen down the immune response. So this is an antiviral, and because people who get this infection, nobody has any immunity, part of the disease is that there's a lot of virus in your lung causing pneumonia. So we can presume that the drug is shutting down viral replication and allowing the body to heal.
Okay, then given what we know about what the drug does in the body, what changes for the way that patients are treated, given the information that we have now? What changes will there be in treatment, if any, at the University of Rochester Medical Center?
Well, I think those changes have to be decided on a national level before they can be applied on a local level. So as Dr. Falsey mentioned, we still have to finish the study. We're probably about 2 or 3 weeks out from completion of the study, and there will be ongoing analyses to sort of have a better sense of what patients will derive the greatest benefit with this therapy, and at what point it will be beneficial. So all of these things have to be looked at very closely. And then I think on a national level, there will be some recommendations that will then apply locally in terms of who the best patients are to treat with remdesivir and who will derive the most benefit. But as we said earlier, before we started these conversations 2 days ago, we didn't have anything with proven benefit. And now we have potentially something that could be beneficial to some of our sicker patients.
Thanks, Brett. We'll move along. I think last is Brian Sharp from the Democrat and Chronicle. But as we did yesterday, I'll invite if any reporter on the line has a follow-up question, send us a chat note, and we've got a little bit of extra time if you'd like that. But Brian, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering if you could tell me, of the 16, how many recovered, how many remain hospitalized, and how many passed away?
Well, we like to focus on the positive. We've had more patients recover than not. But to get into the specifics, I think is unfair to the patients and their families.
And I was wondering, this next drug that's going to be added, baricitinib, I read a little bit about it where there's more concern on possible effects of it. I'm wondering if someone could talk about both what the benefits, why it is needed or why it's being added, and possibly address any of the concerns.
Brian, your audio is a little fuzzy. We're having just a little trouble here. Can you get closer to a microphone or?
Yeah, is this any better?
Much. Thank you.
Okay. I'm leaning over to my computer. I'm just want this baricitinib. I'm sure I'm butchering the name. I'd read a little bit about it, just where there's some concerns about side effects for that drug, and I was wondering what it is treating, why it's needed, is remdesivir shows such positive results, and if someone could address also just if they have any concerns or what some of the concerns might be for patients.
So I'll start the conversation and I'll let Dr. Branch fill in. You know, the results with remdesivir are positive, but I think as most people have said, it's not a miracle drug. And so it becomes our building block on which we try to improve. And so it will become the standard of care arm. So everybody will get remdesivir. And then we add in different agents that may have different properties. The remdesivir is a licensed drug for rheumatoid arthritis. Baricitinib is licensed for that. And so it has a number of properties that maybe you can talk about, and there's some benefit, even though we don't understand the pathogenesis completely of severe disease. It seems to be a combination of both the virus wreaking havoc and then the host immune system maybe not being completely adaptive and causing some problems itself.
Yeah, I think with COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of different disease pathogenesis that's not purely attributable to just the virus. In some patients, we're seeing that they seem to be recovering, but then at around 10 to 14 days, there's sort of this rebound inflammatory process that happens, which could make their course worse. And so the rationale behind using two things instead of just one is that remdesivir would act by preventing the virus from replicating and allowing the body to clear the virus. And baricitinib would act on the body's host response, its defense response, which is causing an inflammatory cascade that may help in some ways, but also can make disease worse. And so the baricitinib would have both an effect on the virus because it does seem to have some antiviral activity, but it would also sort of dampen some of the host responses that we're seeing at around 10 to 14 days is causing this real inflammatory picture that makes their disease course worse. But again, with COVID-19, as with any infection or any disease, it's always a multi-pronged approach, and the antiviral is almost always just one part of that.
So you also asked about side effects. So the baricitinib does have a different side effect profile from the remdesivir, which, as Dr. Branch said, we're happy to know it's pretty well tolerated. Baricitinib is also well tolerated, but has different side effects. It can suppress the immune system, and it can cause some issues with clotting. So those risks will have to be weighed very carefully in individual patients that we consider enrolling in this trial, and there's a lot of safety monitoring. The other thing is that some of the safety data with baricitinib comes from, again, patients with rheumatoid arthritis who take the drug for 16 weeks to 52 weeks. This would be a short course, so it may actually have a different side effect profile.
And it is probably a little bit more available in terms of being able to ramp up manufacturing and availability than remdesivir. So if potentially you could have something that could partner with remdesivir that's already sort of available, that would be helpful.
Well, and another important point, it's an oral therapy. So it's a pill. So, you know, depending on how things go and how it looks, we could consider it for outpatients, which is really not a very feasible option with remdesivir.
And in answer to a question we've all had, we put the spelling of baricitinib in the chat. So if you're not checking chat, the spelling of that drug is there. We've got two follow-up questions. One from Brett Dahlberg, and Brett, if it's okay, I'll just read it. It sounds like we're not at the point yet to offer any clinical recommendations. So how do the doctors reconcile the idea that remdesivir does have some clear benefit with the hesitance to change treatment protocols?
Well, I think to reiterate what Dr. Branch says, you know, eventually the societies will provide guidelines, but there's several things that are influencing what we do here and now. One is availability of the drug. So I do believe clinical practice will change in that physicians with significantly ill patients, ill enough to be in the hospital, it would be a reasonable approach to offer the remdesivir in those patients. But we are continually learning and refining who's going to benefit. But I think once it becomes available, it would be a reasonable thing to use.
And I think we sort of are of the mindset that Dr. Fauci is. Yesterday he said that if when we've looked at all the data over the next couple of weeks, what we're seeing now holds true, then this becomes what we call standard of care, remdesivir, against which all of their therapies are measured. But you know, we're a couple of weeks away from that.
And for the last question, we're going to unmute Brian Sharp of the DNC, who said he had a final follow-up.
Yeah, I was just wanting to clarify, remdesivir right now, that is not available, like it's again not available for compassionate use?
Well, it is. The compassionate use, when last I checked, and this changes very frequently, was available for pregnant women and pediatric patients. And that was the limitations. But seriously, it changes every day. There is something called expanded access, and that is an institution applies to have expanded access, and patients do sign consent. Well, they provide consent, and research data is collected along the way. They check viral loads, they check safety data that are part of an expanded use protocol. And so Gilead has been expanding their expanded use protocol as quickly as they can, but there is such a demand that not every institution that wants it can have it yet. I think eventually they will provide it under emergency use authorization, but the timing of all that we really can't comment on.
All right, thank you, Brian. Dr. Branch and Dr. Falzowski, do you have any final comments, any questions that weren't asked that you'd like to make?
No, just again to thank all the families and the subjects, the patients who were willing to participate in the trial. It was really extraordinary. Thank you.
I reiterate that we are in great debt to the people that participated in the trial, and also the pharmacists, the nurses in the ICU. It really takes a village, and these are complex trials, and it's really been a wonderful and gratifying experience.
Thank you both very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And we'll end this session now and see you again next Tuesday.
Thanks very much, Al.